Now, the first step in implementing the joint agreement between South Korea and China will be a bilateral summit between South Korean President Moon Jae-in and Chinese President Xi Jinping in Vietnam next week on the sidelines of the APEC summit. Our chief Blue House correspondent Moon Connyoung reports.
The statements released simultaneously by Seoul and Beijing on Tuesday breaks down to the following. South Korea and China will put an end to the year-long standoff over the deployment of a U.S. anti-missile system in South Korea. Rather, the two sides will shelve the THAAD missile shield spat and expeditiously bring exchange and cooperation in all areas back on a normal development track. And that includes a second one-on-one between the two heads of state since South Korean President Moon took office in May.
South Korea and China have agreed to hold a bilateral summit between South Korean President Moon Jae-in and Chinese President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the APEC summit in Da Nang, Vietnam next week.
Coming just days before U.S. President Donald Trump makes his maiden trip to Asia, which will likely be dominated by North Korea's nuclear issue, experts say the detente must have come from the two sides realizing that neither country would gain much from a protracted standoff over the THAAD issue. A senior Blue House official who's well in the know of the upcoming Seoul-Beijing summit said Presidents Moon and Xi will also discuss North Korea's missile and nuclear program when they come face-to-face in Da Nang, as well as on ways to improve bilateral ties but keep the issue of THAAD off the table.
Our two countries are also working towards President Moon's bilateral talks with Chinese Prime Minister Li Keqiang when they both take part in the ASEAN-related summits in Manila.
The meeting is expected to be a chance for the South Korean leader to discuss in depth the improvement of ties between the two countries, as Prime Minister Lee is the one directly in charge of China's relations with South Korea. The Blue House says it views the Seoul-Beijing summit talks in Southeast Asia next week as the first step in restoring bilateral cooperation and exchanges in all areas back on a normal path. Moon Connyoung, Arirang News, The Blue House.